back from the UK so we can get back at it. Welcome into the FiredUP Network for Sports Wrap. I'm Gerald Bentley, joined by Rudy Reyes, the Rude Dog. We're here on the FiredUP Network. The best place to get us that True TV Plus app. You can download it anywhere you get your apps now. And Rudy, it's week 0 of the college football season. And we've actually gotten to see some pretty impactful games that are already having an influence on how the NCAA playoffs are going to come together. And it's still week 0. It's been a crazy start.
Yeah, it's been a crazy start. You're talking about week 0. A lot of teams ended up with zeros or goose eggs on the board. Of course, not really a big shocker. Surprising you about a lot of shifts in the Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC. I mean, NIL money is rolling in, so these guys are cashing in at the same exact time. It's roll to catch, or sometimes catch and then roll. You see Missouri just slaughtered all over Murray State. Not that anybody expected otherwise, but the way that they did it, 20 in the first, 7 in the second, 10 in the third, and then 6 in the fourth, just to add the cherry to the sundae. It was bad. Bad news. Utah just careened Southern Utah. Not that anybody was surprised by that one. But I look at this NCAA season as kind of starting up, right? Talking about week 0 and a lot of zeros on the board, a lot of goose eggs. Now, this is an early season. This isn't for anybody to get panicked over. You look at the betting lines and what those look like. Okay, fine. You can shiver me timbers all you want, but this season is far from over as we see, USC and LSU battling it out at a 20, to 27 now lead by USC with an extra point. That was good. So a lot of teams that were bigger, larger, got the killer contract negotiations in the offseason that will help them move and catapult them into prime time games as the season rolls on. Teams like Utah, teams like Kansas, teams like NC State, all rolling over a lot of the smaller schools. I think it's the big guy with the 0 on his chest and the 2 little ones with the percentile trying to bring him down. And we know that's not going to happen. We've already seen that, and it's going to be ongoing.
Yeah. Hey, let's start, though, with somebody who I think can start to panic and start to own that meltdown that he was showing last season during his press conferences and his coach's call-in show. Dabo Swinney, the Bulldogs, UGA, they rolled the Clemson Tigers. This is a game that was being billed as one of the most influential and significant week 0 games in modern college football. We're going to get a matchup of 2 of the key quarterbacking stars of college football this year. Carson Beck for the University of Georgia going up against Cade Klubnik, a couple of guys who were some of the highest recruited players in the country when they came out. And it ends up 34-3. University of Georgia beating down the Clemson Tigers, and it wasn't as close as that. Have we hit the point where it's time to say that the game has passed you by, Dabo? Not taking transfers, not giving NIL money. The only significant college football power team in the country to not take a single transfer, and they went and just got curb stomped week 0 by the University of Georgia. The gap between those 2 programs hasn't looked bigger. And we can even go ahead and stretch it out one more level. The gap between the SEC and the ACC, save the team we'll talk about a little bit later, looks pretty big too. What do you think of that game? Because that was just a beatdown.
That was just a huge disparity. When you look at that offense, it just looked feeble and looked old. It looked wilted. I mean, you couldn't prescribe anything worse to happen to Dabo Swinney and the Clemson team. I mean, there was no real defense, no real offense of any kind. You maybe have expected Dabo to really kind of swing back for the fences. Unfortunately, the team just wasn't up to the task to handle a Georgia Bulldog team. I think historically 42 and change in the opening season against a team that was just shy of getting the national championship, and lost to Alabama. I mean, it just sickens me to death to think how badly this game really was. I mean, you can look at it on paper and it looks equally as bad as what you were watching on TV. There was no difference. There was nothing to save the life for this Clemson team at all. Not even a life preserver available to pull them out of the ocean as they were drowning in the onslaught of Carson Beck and the way that these guys took care of business on every single possession.
Yeah, Carson Beck played with former University of Georgia quarterback Matt Stafford level efficiency, just cut them apart. While on the other side, Clemson responded with a grand total of 188 yards of offense. That's in college football, where if you don't regularly watch college football, you just watch the NFL, there's a difference. The way the clock stops in college football, there's always an eternity of time to come back. You get the clock stopping on every first down. The game, the way it's played, it rewards you dinking and dunking and getting those first downs because you don't have to worry about time management. The clock stops every time you get a first down. The games never end, except they ended for Clemson because they couldn't get those first downs. I mean, 188 yards when you consider 3/4 of the game was garbage time. They should have at least gotten 300 yards of offense, and it just wasn't there. And are we seeing the impact of essentially a de facto salary cap? If the one school is willing to spend money and the other one isn't, you're not competing.
No, there's absolutely no way to compete. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's not really the fact that they lost, it's how they lost. The inefficiencies on third down, not being able to run the ball, there was no creativity. There was absolutely nothing to really speak of to suggest that this team, now a one-loss team, one in the L column, can even find a way back and even into a natty conversation. Going back to the USC LSU game that's still currently going on right now, Newsmeyer looked really good, came in clutch situations as Dylan Daniels, who I want to give a shout out to because he's from my hometown of San Bernardino, California. Okay. Where he kind of took control where he needed to and when he needed to and how he did it down the field, marching down, putting them in positions to win. There was nothing formidable about this Clemson team being able to do anything with the ball, regardless of how many possessions, regardless of how little of first down yardage they received, even after the catch. It was just absolutely horrible. And I don't think this team has anything to look forward to, especially when you talk about a national championship conversation, considering the way that they lost. Not how they lost, it's the way that they lost. And they looked absolutely pathetic against a very dominant Georgia team who just shines year after year after year.
Okay, now let's move to another game that was a surprise in the level of dominance. This happened on Saturday. Your Miami of Florida Hurricanes, the Canes, they played at a Category 5 level against the Florida Gators. Transfer quarterback, knows the trench here, Cam Ward looked great and led Mario Cristobal's team to a big win against the Gators. 41-17. It wasn't that close. This was a game that was being billed as the hot seat game. Mario Cristobal, who's been kind of disappointing as the Hurricanes coach, that's a program that historically, hey, win it all, be a top 10 team, or you failed. And then Florida, which I have to put into that, they're in that category, that select few with, I would say, Georgia, Alabama, the Ohio State University, Michigan, I don't know, UCLA, USC. You lose 3 games. Okay, that's your strike 1 and strike 2. You got one more year. You better get it going. Billy Napier's on strike 3 right now, and I think he may get fired mid-season.
He could. He definitely has the propensity to do it. You think he would show up against a team like Miami, who, for all intents and purposes, nobody really had any pre-football conversation about how good they were going to be, how solid they were going to be under center. And the fact alone, this is almost a one and done situation as a head coaching spot in Florida. Ouch. I mean, you again, it's how they lost. And when you give up 17 points in the second and 14 in the third, that doesn't say anything about your ability to stop the run. You can't stop the pass. And when you have a solid running game like Miami had, as well as some of that play action, I mean, you can't stop that. You don't have any answer for what they're trying to accomplish once that ball is snapped. You have nothing. You have absolutely nothing. You're going to find yourself being ran through the ringer. Exactly what happened at 41-17 over Florida. And unfortunately, if Florida doesn't right the ship, they can find themselves without, again, another situation in the SEC where you look at the team we were just talking about. I think that there's a lot to be said for where they're at and where Clemson is in that 1L column. And if they don't, again, right that ship, they can find themselves, again, not in any type of national championship conversation, context, or no context associated with it.
Yeah, no. And in the SEC, I mean, here, just the reality. It was already the hardest conference in football. Now you add Oklahoma, you add Texas to the mix. If you don't win out your pre-conference games, you're toast, because it's really, really hard to win out in the SEC. I mean, it just is. You're going to have to consider Alabama, Georgia, Missouri this year is in the top 25, and they look really good. LSU, despite falling to USC in that historic SEC Big Ten matchup, LSU is a good program. You can't roll into the SEC and think you'll fix it in conference play. And here,
no.
It's not like Florida did Dabo Swinney's route and didn't take transfers. They did. Graham Mertz, the quarterback for Florida, he's from right where I'm filming this, from Overland Park, Kansas. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm about 15 minutes away from where Graham Mertz is from. He was a high-level recruit, went to the University of Wisconsin, a weird pick for a passing quarterback, but he went there. He was one of the first guys to really lean into the NIL money, has his own line of merchandise. He's a big money transfer to Florida, and he looked adequate at best. I mean, he made Kate Klubnik look good. That's not going to get it done. And I'd like to see Graham Mertz get it done, but man, it's not happening.
No, it's not. It's a really far cry. You know, I look at the NIL portion of this, right? Because if you're not a shining star and you don't answer the bell, all that money is all basically for naught, and you'll end up getting less and less and less. I don't know the parameters of what that looks like from, you know, within the context of NIL money, but if you don't perform, you're not going to get any of that. You're going to get very little. Again, one of those guys in a situation where he needs.
I mean, Graham Mertz isn't I'm sure he's getting a decent chunk of money. I mean, just for people watching this, put it in perspective. This is nothing like the old days of college football where, hey, the local car dealership's paying you for being a car detailer, but you're not actually going to work. Or the low-level Division I school that I went to, they would give us an envelope, a white envelope full of cash on road trips with like $600 or $800 of quote unquote meal money, while every meal on the road trip was catered. It's not that. This is a prepaid, guaranteed money of like $1 million. And if we believe the reports, up to $5 million that a guy we'll talk about a little bit later playing for the Ohio State University got. This is a lot of money that's being thrown at these guys, and they're expecting results because here in this game, Cam Ward, one and done. He's a senior transfer, a graduate senior transfer. You got 1 year. Graham Mertz is in his extra year of eligibility. So, I mean, these are guys who were brought in knowing, okay, you're an established talent. Here you go. Here's the money. Get it done. Different ball.
Not so. Yeah, it's completely different. It's a night and day. I mean, you look at where these guys' mentalities are without that money. Imagine what they actually look like with that money, with that amount of money. Sadly enough, I think that depending on how highly you're sought after and what that looks like as far as your bank account and what you have in there prior to going into the NFL, if in fact you end up getting drafted and picked and fortunate enough to play in the National Football League,
Sure.
you could end up retiring without having to play it down. I mean, especially how good you are.
Of course you can.
It's more often than not when you find guys who are in a situation where they know they need the money because mom and dad and whatever situation they're facing requires for them to have that kind of money. But at the same token, if they're not worth being paid the amount of money that they're getting, then that could very well fall by the wayside. And they're going to be on the outside looking in saying, well, more porridge, please. They're not going to get that porridge. The only thing they're going to get is pennies on the dollar, especially if they don't perform at this level.
Well, and it does, here to reference back to an earlier game, Carson Beck, he could have left. He would have been right there, I think, with JJ McCarthy in terms of draft status. But he's going to get a couple of mil to play for a dominant team loaded at every position with guys running high school wide open, pad those stats up, and be able to walk his way to probably a number 1, number 2, number 3 pick in the NFL draft next year. That's not a bad place to be.
No, it's not at all. And you find quarterbacks, and of course, one of the most highest paid positions in the National Football League. Everybody knows that. It's not rocket science. But when you look at guys like Carson Beck, I think that his play may warrant being a higher pick if he was to leave after this season, especially winning another national championship. I mean, clearly there is a learning curve. You have to recognize what that is, especially when you're seeking after the National Football League and a position with any given 32 teams within the NFL to say, you know what, I am now ready. I'd hate to think that the fate of some of these guys when they leave the college level may or may not achieve the greatness because they didn't stay right inside of the college system for at least another year or max out their eligibility, right? Because perhaps they're just not ready at that point. So by Carson Beck staying, I think was probably the best thing he could have done, not only for his collegiate career, but how that will transition into the National Football League next year when he gets picked by a team who may not necessarily be in a dire need for a guy. We look at the New England Patriots, we look at other teams in the National Football League, say, you know what, I'm going to take the best quarterback available. Well, he may not be available, at least at that point, right? So you take the next best thing. Carson Beck will be one of the sought after, probably top 5 picks. Maybe go third overall by some team that actually does need him. But again, smart decision by him to stay at Georgia, at least for now.
Who knows? He could get reunited with his number 1 receiver from last year, Brock Bowers, with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Especially with Minshew not working out.
Yeah, I don't see that working. No, one of these things is not like the other, right? Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Gardner Minshew. It's not going to work too well. Let's go to another game that was a big game last night in more ways than one, because one of the overarching stories of this season, there's going to be the conference realignment, there's going to be the impact of money, and then there's going to be the 12-team college football playoff making its debut. Well, it looks like we can already pencil one team in. Notre Dame, on the basis of having 2 hard games all year, they win one of them, took out the Aggies at Texas A&M, win the hardest game of the season until their game the final week, their traditional showdown against the USC Trojans, who obviously look pretty good in their week 0 game against LSU. Are you okay with Notre Dame basically being able to sleepwalk their way into the college football playoffs?
No, I'm actually not okay with it. And there's a couple of reasons why is because they need to be able to face adversity. They have to recognize that this is not going to be a cakewalk. So granted, every team in the FBS and FCS and throughout the NCAA landscape will say, you know what, we need a tougher schedule. We need to test our mettle. We have to understand that we have to, be hit in the face with adversity. Nothing should be a given. Nothing should be a walk on. And unfortunately, this may or may not work to the benefit of where Notre Dame sees themselves in the long term. But I will tell you this. I look at Notre Dame and a 23-13 win over A&M. A&M is not an easy out. They haven't been an easy out. They haven't been the best program, but they have never been an easy out. This right here was by far a very masterful game by Notre Dame. And it's almost as if they're picking up where they left off last season as well, when you think about how well they did down the stretch. So could this be a take two? Quite possibly. Would you see Notre Dame in the top 10 maybe mid-season? I would say so, considering how they played yesterday against Texas. So, I believe that Notre Dame certainly has something up their sleeve, but nothing should be a given at all in any college football program, no matter what.
Well, now, again, to be fair, they don't play the games on paper, but on paper, Notre Dame has a 76% chance or better winning every game the rest of the way. They have another high-paid transfer quarterback, Riley Leonard, who left Duke. His head coach left as well, Mike Elko. He was the head coach of the team that they beat, Texas A&M. So, it's not guaranteed, but they got a pretty good path to go. Riley Leonard was a very good quarterback for Duke without a semblance of the talent that he's going to be playing with at Notre Dame. And, it's going to be an interesting story because you're looking for the drama, you're looking for the matchup, you're looking for the intrigue and everybody fighting their way through to get one of those playoff spots. And it's week 0. We're not even in week 1. And you could already see the lines forming and pretty good ideas of multiple teams that are going to have playoff spots locked down.
Sure, absolutely. The lines are being drawn in the sand as we speak. And, when we look at Notre Dame, they're going to take on Northern Illinois. Yeah, that's more likely a win. Against Purdue, their basketball program's better than their football program. And no offense to, to Purdue, but the Boilermakers have not had some of the best records historically against, any team. But I look at Notre Dame, and again, everything looks great on paper, but they need to put pen to the paper and translate that onto the football team in order to win out at that 76% or better, or maybe in some instances, maybe less. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and to be fair, the way they are going to walk in, they have to beat everyone except USC. If they lose a game or two along the way, well, they're in the danger zone of getting bumped out because their strength of schedule is just not going to be there. So they do have a little bit of pressure on them.
Well, they do, and USC is not going to be an easy out, especially based on what I was watching tonight against LSU. This is not the same USC team that we had seen in the past. This isn't the gunslinging, first type of methodology that the Trojans are playing with. They're playing with a full deck on both sides of the ball, including special teams, and I just think they're going to be a very formidable team down the stretch. I don't think Notre Dame's going to get past them. They could in the slim margin, maybe a 3-point field goal with maybe 5 seconds left, but I just think USC just has too much and is going to flex their muscle on them.
Well, and it was a different looking USC team, not just the absence of Caleb Williams, who's going to be patrolling Lake Michigan shores for the Chicago Bears this year, but they actually played defense. Last year, for USC to win, they needed Caleb Williams to outscore the other team. They actually
they sure did.
Had a defensive effort tonight, which is a change.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. They were crowding the line. They hid their blitz packages. They were great on the corners. The tackles did what they needed to do. I mean, they showed up in all 3 phases. And when you can do that, especially against the not so easy out team in LSU and the Les Miles led Tigers, that says a lot about you. Now they're going to go up in the 1-0, column, taking that winner. So one of those situations where you're seeing things form. What they always say: objects in the mirror look closer than they appear. So we're going to see what the rearview mirror looks like for some of these teams a lot earlier than we might expect.
Well, use that analogy. A guy who's looking in the rearview mirror to see who may be gaining on him. Ryan Day, the head coach of the Ohio State University Buckeyes, has to be feeling a little bit better. His team, with new additions, offense coordinator Chip Kelly, who made the astonishing move of resigning from a powerhouse college head coaching job to step down to become a coordinator. Maybe he was smelling a little blood in the water in Columbus. Chip Kelly and new quarterback Will Howard transfer from K-State, where he wasn't even the full-time starter last year. They took a half to get going, playing against the fellow Ohio school, the University of Akron Zips. But after the half, Will Howard and the Buckeyes, they pulled away. They win. They did what you'd expect a reported $5 million a year transfer quarterback would do. But there is no substitute for Ohio State this year beyond winning the Big Ten and advancing at least, I'd say, to the championship game, because Day has burned out any bridges that he had in Ohio. He's got to win or he's gone. And the replacement just so happens to be on the staff.
And he's breathing down his neck at every single, waking moment that he's walking on the sideline. Mm-hmm. I look at Akron, and I think to myself, okay, did they have a shot? No, not really. Not against Ohio State. And in an opening game where they basically got taken to the slaughterhouse with 52-6, and it wasn't even close. I hate to use that euphemism, but it's true. Yeah, close to the half, but again, you recognize what the team looks like, how they're looking, and the ways that you can exploit them in all three phases, and that's exactly what they did. They did it early, and they did it often. Would I suggest that the Zips had a chance? Look, you always have a chance regardless of who you are. The minute you step on the field, you have an opportunity to win. It's not as if they were being counted out, maybe not by Zip fans all over the country, if that even does exist, but I think more so.
I used to host a coaching show for Akron Zips Radio. No, they don't have any Zips fans. I used to do a weekly interview with former Notre Dame coach Jerry Faust when he was the head coach of the University of Akron Zips and was hired to try and bring attention to the University of Akron, which, just for a perspective, is about 45 minutes outside of Cleveland. So the thought was, hey, we're going to be Cleveland's college football team, Division I. We got the old Notre Dame head coach here, a guy who won high school national championships at Cincinnati Moeller. Here we go. And nobody cares.
Well, we see how that we'll see how that happened. And what actually happened was all said and done. That doesn't sound like they have any fans anywhere. But with that being said, I mean, they looked good early on, which I felt as though they had the momentum, especially going into the half. But again, we've seen this tale of two cities happen way too often when you look at college teams that look good in the first half, but somehow manage to fall apart. And here comes the volcano, raining on their parade like it did in Pompeii, and destroy any opportunity that they had. There again, the tale of two teams, the way that they played, how they played, especially against the Ohio State University. Are you kidding me? You can't give them an inch because they will take the entire field. And they did that early and often in that massive win. So what wasn't expected? Yeah, I think most people could probably say it was. I expected it. I know you did, at least based on what we've seen from Ryan Day and Ohio State. But going back to Ryan Day, I think there's a lot to be said for where he's at right now from a coaching perspective. He needs to win out, and he needs to win big. And that's every single game and every single angle. If he does not have a guy in the running for a Heisman Trophy, then he doesn't have a chance. He will be one and done at the end of this season. I'm just telling it like it is. I mean, look, the bottom line is this: will he get into a playoff conversation? Well, that's hard to say. I mean, they do have a rough schedule. They do have a tough schedule, and it's not a walk-on schedule like we've seen with Notre Dame. So I take nothing for granted, and neither should Ohio State.
Hey, I want to ask this because I've been thinking about this and just looking at all these high-level transfer quarterbacks. Do you think some of these top programs have just given up on developing a quarterback from high school, and they're looking to just pry ready-made starters from other programs, not even necessarily small programs? Because, I mean, Notre Dame pulled Riley Leonard from Duke. It's not like Duke doesn't have money. Will Howard came from Kansas State, a Big 12 school that gets, $40-some million a year in just TV money and sells out every game. They got revenue. Is it just that, hey, we're the big programs, we're going to find somebody, or we're just going to buy them, and if that doesn't work, we'll try somebody next year? I don't think Florida is all that concerned that they're not going to be able to get somebody to replace Graham Mertz. They've got a booster probably that's already called up the AD and said, hey, I own a chain of car dealerships. I've got a $5 million check here. Get us a quarterback. I mean, do you think that's what it's come down to?
I think it does. Unfortunately, I'd hate to believe that, we have now thrown the proverbial high school quarterback position under the bus at full speed instead of looking at it from a developmental standpoint. This is like the NFL. This is a win now, not win as in when are we going to win. It's win now or don't win at all. And unfortunately, the days of being able to custom tailor make a quarterback from basically nothing to understand the collegiate system and the college level of play versus the high school level of play is completely different. It's like saying, I'm going to put a high school quarterback in the NFL. Well, we know that's not going to work, and neither will it work without training, without patience, without a high IQ guy under center to run the offense. I mean, and clearly ones that have been taken in and put under the wing that have had somewhat maybe success from the past college, the colleges that they have attended, perhaps they've seen something in them. So I think that the days of nurturing, campaigning for a guy coming out of high school to be the next star quarterback is a thing of the past.
Yeah, and this isn't the first year it happened, obviously, because, last year, Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix had transferred already. But, it just seems to be jumping out. Now, there's some exceptions, obviously. Carson Beck, and this is crazy to hear this phrase being thrown around, but he's a homegrown Georgia quarterback. He was a freshman recruit to Georgia. Brady Cook, the quarterback for the University of Missouri, is a guy who's from Missouri, and his dream when he was playing in high school was to be the starting quarterback for the University of Missouri. So there is some of that, but it really seems like some of these programs have just said, hey, it's not worth risking it. We're not going to go with the freshman. We're going to find whoever the best person is out there that we've seen do it at this level. And we got enough boosters, man. Somebody's going to stroke a check.
Yeah, and sadly, you know what? I look at this. I look at Avery Johnson, talking about Kansas State and what he's done. Miller Moss at a USC. I mean, there's so many different options. Malik Murphy out of Duke, not known for their drafting of quarterbacks. We see what Daniel Jones has done in the National Football League, which is basically nothing but one good season. Mm-hmm. So I mean, there are guys like we talked about Nussmeier, what he's done, what he continues to do despite the loss against USC, who's, again, not to be taken lightly or for granted, for Pac-12 team, no longer a pack of anything, maybe a pack of wolves. But Dylan Raiola out of Nebraska, he reminds me of a young Patrick Mahomes out of Texas Tech. There's yeah. I mean, just a smidgen. His rollout, his instincts, his fast IQ, being able to get the ball out of his hands in a timely manner to someone who's wide open creatively, I might add, says a lot about his propensity of growth and where he stands. And Jalen Rayner, out of Arkansas State, the guy I mean, 2,550 yards against the Red Wolves. I mean, he's an NC State guy. I mean, going to Arkansas. So again, there's a lot of shifts in motion. And of course, quarterbacks know that the best, right? It's all about the snap and the motion and the reads and what that looks like downfield. But I think that the days of, again, I'm a proponent of homegrown guys. I really am. I always have been. Of course, we knew that Fresno State was going to lose that game. Wyoming didn't look good yesterday against Arizona. But I think that the days of where the quarterback position is an ever evolving position that we'll see further evolve as the years go on with this NIL money, with the reshifting of a now 12-game system. So there's a lot to be said for guys that have had experience and some success at other colleges now find themselves in a more of an equivalent type of environment where they can grow even more.
Very true. And let's look at one other school that has definitely used the transfer portal and the NIL windows. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and the Colorado Buffaloes. This was going to be their year that they were going to spring forward, right? They were going to be an impact team moving into the new Big 12. Well, they barely win week 0 against North Dakota State. To be fair, North Dakota State and the Bison are a very good 1AA team, or Division I football playoff division team. They are. They're really good at it. But the North Dakota State Bison, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, I don't care how good they are in their division. You can't be a good major conference team and struggle to beat those guys. Colorado has, if Carson Beck's not the top recruited quarterback for the NFL draft, Shedeur Sanders is, Deion's son. They got Travis Hunter, who's a tremendous two-way player. And then they got a bunch of other guys that Deion just got transferred in because he got sick of the guys that he recruited and said, okay, you guys go, I'm going to get new guys. Second year in a row, he's done that. Massive turnover of the roster, and they don't look any better than they did last year.
No, they don't look very good. They don't. They almost look exactly the same, and I don't mean that necessarily from a schematic standpoint, but a personnel grouping. What does that look like in all three phases? Defense, offense. I mean, they're all different players, granted, but I think Coach Prime's still not happy.
But the results are the same.
Yeah, exactly. And they barely squeaked by an DSU team, as you stated, who's been very good, who, is part of the FCS. And I watched that game and I just thought to myself, man, Colorado, just too many mistakes. They didn't capitalize when they had possession. They're just things that they did not do well. I would think that when I look at the coaching, if there was like a coaching ranking of, A through F and who did worse, okay, fine. So Deion Sanders could have done better. He is self-admittedly. And of course, I want to divert a little bit to the guy who was basically banned from asking Coach Prime about why he didn't care for the ref calls during last year's. And he was banned for life, I think, which is absolutely absurd and stupid to even think you would do that to somebody. Whoever heard of freedom of the press? I don't know, last time I checked, that still was a thing. But I would give Coach Prime a B. He could have done a lot better, could have had his guys that much more better. But when you look at the individual play of his son, Shedeur, 40 pass plays and 17 runs doesn't exactly spell offensive fluidity to me. I mean, you have to have a balanced run and passing attack. And unfortunately, they just did not get it done. And look, again, all credit to the fact that they won, but it was a squeaker. It was a squeaker. If they had not converted and getting that touchdown, they would have lost to NDSU and would have been an ultimate embarrassment. And the media would have basically crucified Coach Sanders in regards to this loss and how they lost. It's not as if the Bison did anything better, but they had better man coverage. And I think man coverage says a lot against Shedeur Sanders, who typically does a pretty decent job at being able to read man coverage. But 20 first half points. They did some confusion defensively against NDSU. I just think that when you look at where NDSU actually got better, was in that run pass, being able to recognize, back off the defensive tackles. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that Shedeur Sanders could be the next guy. An early season, I get it. I trust me, I get it. I understand, but he needs to capitalize on the opportunities in front of him at this level, because he's not going to be at this level very long, and could be an NFL team calling him, but not be drafted in the position that he would like, much less his dad would want him in.
Well, I do think he'll get a lot better coaching, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of substance to the style of a Deion Sanders coach team. Because now that you're playing with, and hey, he did a great job at Jackson State, but now you're at a different level of talent. You have a big step up, and you can't just roll the ball out there, tell some stories, and lose it on guys saying, hey, you're not good enough, we're getting better. He may be victim of, how many times have we heard that great players don't make great coaches?
Far too often. So you see Michael Jordan, who flopped.
Yeah, it's hard for you to say, look, it's easy, just do this, because you were so amazingly good. It was easy for you to just go out there and do this. And that doesn't seem to translate. And the frustration level he shows in just launching players out of there, that's not sustainable. It just isn't. At some point, you're going to run out of guys that you can shuffle through. And also, heck, you'll run out of kids. Let's look at a little bit. Yeah, your own kids. Yeah, he's already done. He doesn't have any more to play. Let's take a look close to where I'm at here as we're winding it down here. All three Kansas City area Division I colleges are in the top 25 in football preseason. First time ever. The KU Jayhawks, the K-State Wildcats, and the Missouri Tigers. They all played an assortment of no one, really. Missouri played the Murray State Racers. K-State played the Tennessee Martin Skyhawks. And he just ran out there. These were the old payday games. Hey, here you go. Here's your check. Thanks for taking the beat down. Enjoy your season in the Sun Belt. But they all look really good, and they should be factors going through the year. Out of these three teams, who do you think's done the best job coaching? Chris Kleiman at K-State, a school where only one other guy has really won. That was Bill Snyder. Lance Leipold at KU, where really nobody who's coached football outside of Mark Mangino has done anything in the modern history of college football. Or Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri, a better historic program, but a program that's been playing in the SEC, so in the pressure cooker. Who do you think's done the best job out of those three guys?
Well, I look at Chris Kleiman. He's making $50 million. Okay, fine, wonderful. He's done pretty good things. He's done some decent recruiting. Hasn't been kind of a splash, coach like a Deion Sanders or anything. But he certainly has put his team in a better position, because he comes in with a winning record of 40-24. So you kind of roll that over into the following year. There's a lot to be said for being able to bring a program up. He was a former player. He played for Northern Iowa. He was a defensive back. So he knows defense. Now he just has to incorporate that. We're talking about great players don't make great head coaches. Well, he wasn't a great player. He was a very good player, but wasn't a great player. But what he does bring is the understanding of defensive formation. So we've seen defensive guys become head coaches. Are they defensive centric? Well, maybe. You look what happened with Mike Tomlin. He comes over from Minnesota as a defensive line coach, and became a head coach for the Steelers years ago. So is he doing better it's too early to tell, but I think he's done better so far out of
That's
the
fair.
three aforementioned teams. Has he done great? Well, no, not really. I mean, his record 112-37. That speaks to something, right? He's been to two bowl games, but lost two bowl games. He's been to the FCS playoffs. 18-1 in those tournaments. So again,
With
he brings. Yeah, I mean, he brings accolades. I just don't know that anybody else within the three aforementioned guys are going to do anything better. Will the program be better with him leading it? I don't know. In week one, it's just so much. There's so much red tape. It's hard to say they're going to do any better this year than they did last year.
he has the winning pedigree because the reason we talk about North Dakota State University being a good program in the FBS level, well, it's because of Chris Kleinman. He was the guy who got that program rolling and had those wins. It was him. So he is doing at K-State what he did at North Dakota State. They're a very methodical, run-heavy, risk-averse football team. The Mike Tomlin comparison's good because, there's a lot of similarities in the coaching style between the two guys and even their mannerisms. I mean, very, very matter-of-fact, very calm, very, very, very methodical. And
very, very much so.
Will Howard, he got the bag of money from Ohio State, but he wasn't even the full-time starter last year. The freshman, Avery Johnson, was already getting starting nods because of his running ability. So it'll be interesting to see what Avery Johnson does because he's replacing a guy who got ran out and got $5 million walking out the door. KU, Lance Leopold, they got the new stadium going in KU. Every game's going to be a road game this year for the Jayhawks. They're driving 40 minutes down the road. They're going to play their non-con games at Children's Mercy Park, Sporting Kansas City Soccer Stadium in KCK. And then their conference games are going to be played at Arrowhead, just across the river in Kansas City, Missouri this year. The new KU on-campus stadium will be opened up, ready to go next season. So that's something that is a credit to Lance Leopold because after Mark Mangino left, I don't think anybody saw a $450 million football investment coming to Lawrence, Kansas, the place that Bill Self built. And then in Missouri, Eli Grinkowitz renovated stadium, and you got a team that's ready to make a big run at it. Luther Burden, the wide receiver, 5-star recruit. He's at Missouri, and he's elevating that program and bringing some other recruits in with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And going back to Kyleman for just a moment, or Kleiman, excuse me, he's doing great things. I mean, he's been coach of the year. He did it in 2017. He's on pace to do it again this year. This guy's a no frills, no chills, no spills guy. I mean, he spells it like it is phonetically, not his style. He's going to tell you like it is. He has his own euphemism, going back to the Mike Tomlin comparison. So he brings his personality, not only as a player, but to translate that into a better team environment, a better team outlook. And overall, I think this team would be one to contend with probably a lot sooner than most people think.
Oh, yeah, no, I think they're going to have a very good year this year. And they are stepping it up at a level where I think they're going to try to show that traditional kind of smash mouth option run style can still make it work in this era of college football. Well, we're going to have a lot of college football to talk about as we move into the season. I mean, this is week 0, and you already have lots of storylines being developed and lots of plot lines. It really kind of ties into the sister station, Wrestling Spotlight, where the storylines, the plot lines, the matchups determine so much of what happens in a week, in a season. So with that, let's let Lawera Loca Taya Valkyrie introduce weekly champion right here.
Hey, what's
So here you go. Weekly Champions brought to you by Wrestling Spotlight. La Guerra Loca, Taya Valkyrie introducing it. Rudy, who's your champion of the week to wrap up Sports Wrap here?
Oh man, there are so many of them right now. I would say that if there was anyone who would be the champion of the week for me, it would be Lincoln Riley. It would be Lincoln Riley, and there's a couple reasons why. First reason is he's done everything he needed to do. All the talk, all the hype, all the conversations, the preseason, at least in NCAA or week 0, and a win against LSU. Absolutely phenomenal. I didn't see that coming. I think only he did. So kudos to him, and just USC overall would be my co-champ chair, because they were able to pull it off and just get it done in all 3 phases, and they did it continuously throughout the game.
It's good. I'm going to go with Cam Ward for leaving and leading the University of Miami Hurricane in that dominant win against the Florida Gators. Headed out of Washington State, senior quarterback for the Hurricanes. And Cam Ward is probably Mario Cristobal's best friend right now, because off of the hot seat, he gets to take the Hurricanes against a bad ACC, and a lot of pressure on the Florida Gators now. So Cam Ward gets mine. A close second, having just gotten back from AEW All In, would be your CEO, Mercedes Moné, retaining the TBS title and the New Japan Women's Strong title. And they're going into All Out. You can hear us talk about that on Wrestling Spotlight later on in the week. But the college football season's rolling along. Rudy, where can people find some of your takes and coverage of this football season?
Oh, wow. You can see it on the RootDogShow.com. You can see it right here on FiredUP Network as well with Gerald Bentley. And you guys can follow me on Twitter, or X, as we commonly are starting to figure out what that is now, at RootDog Reyes. You can go to Instagram, Rudy Reyes, and you can find me anywhere paperbacks are sold.
Excellent. And I feel a lot better tonight than I did on Thursday night hosting Timeout after spending 27 hours at the airport getting back from London. We'll be joined later on this week by Alex Campbell on Timeout and some other guests covering Kansas City sports and also the National Football League. For Rudy Reyes, I'm Gerald Bentley. Thanks for watching us on the Fired Up Network. Go ahead and download that app, the True TV Plus app. It's the best way to watch it. You can get on any apps available. You can also see us on sports.tv and Carbon TV. Until next week, thanks a lot. We'll see you back here on the Fired Up Network for more sports and entertainment.